Hey there, it is Petrifying Pumpkins here with a PSVR news update, and it's a pretty exciting one for me because it's all about Firewall 0 Hour, which is my most anticipated PSVR title of 2018, and I'm praying to God it doesn't fall back to 2019. Since being revealed by Sean Layden at PSX last year, we haven't really heard an awful lot about the game, besides from some impressions from people who were at that event. And since it is currently slated for release in 2018 still, I was hoping for some more info by now because this game makes me a thirsty little bitch. A couple days ago I went on to First Contact's Twitter account, and if you don't know who they are, those are the guys who are actually developing this game. They were also behind Raw Data, if you ever heard of that one. So I saw a tweet from them on the 5th of April that showed, a couple of guys with camera equipment, sound equipment. There was a guy sitting down with a script, maybe a sound guy, whatever, and the tweet said, that was it, a bit cryptic, a bunch of Firewall and PlayStation related hashtags. So one of the people's replying to that tweet was a guy who was probably equally as thirsty as I was, and he was asking for news on Firewall, to which the official account replied that they had just done a European press event with PlayStation and that articles were starting to appear now. So that was on the 5th. So of course I went googling but couldn't find anything until today, when I put a bit more effort into my googling, because that's just how dedicated I am to keeping you guys in the loop when it comes to Firewall 0 Hour. So I found a staggering 3 articles, one from an Australian website. Actually, it was the same website that I sourced the info from for the Blood and Truth video that I did. They are pressstart.au. Then there was a Portuguese site and a Polish site where I had to do some Google translating, so some stuff probably got lost in translation, but there's still enough to help feed the craving for Firewall. So let's start with the one we don't need to translate, pressstart.au's preview. The author here says something about Firewall that I think almost everyone else has also said by now. Basically that it's Rainbow Six in VR. But that's not like a derogatory way, it's a good way. So he played a game of 4v4 and he used the aim controller in the preview. The first new piece of info we learn is that there is some kind of pre-game space, as he calls it, where you can chat with both your teammates and the opposition before the round starts. So I kind of like the idea of this. In theory, you could get inside your opponent's heads here, maybe make them feel uncomfortable and confused, like so many of my ex-girlfriends. Or you could perhaps discuss fake tactics with your teammates to throw the enemies off, but you can be a bit tricky there, More than likely now it'll be some prick playing music too loudly over his mic, but in theory, the theory is sound. That could work. The author goes on to say that this is also the space where you can pick your contractor. So contractors is what Firewall calls its characters, the soldiers. So you select a character rather than create one. So each character has a name and a backstory and their own abilities, just like Rainbow Six Siege. The Australian author here went and picked the Australian contractor, and his name was Skip. So he had a beard and sunglasses, but of course he won't be a true Australian unless his in-game dialogue has him dropping the C-bomb every 2 minutes. So in the game you will either be an attacker or defender. So as an attacker, it's your job to hack a laptop, but first you have to locate the laptop, which is done by tapping into some kind of access point, of which there are many dotted around the map. So the spawns of these things are random, so that keeps things a bit fresh, keeps you on your toes. You can't just rely on the same tactics over and over again, which is similar to Siege. So I'm guessing these developers got a ton of inspiration from Rainbow Six Siege. So he goes on to describe how tense the gameplay is. When there is a firefight, it is usually over quickly, he says, and I'm assuming that means that there will be, slightly realistic bullet damage, so only a few bullets needed to kill, and you can see how that would really add to the tension, especially as you only have like 1 life per round, I believe. So the author ends by saying that he hopes Firewall gets the fanfare that it deserves, that he could tell that the devs put a lot of love into the game when they talked about it, and he even sees us having potential to enter the esports scene. So yeah, it's very glowing impressions there, I think. So next, let's see what this Portuguese guy thought of Firewall. And again, I have to stress that some things may have gotten lost in translation, so don't kill me if I get it wrong. So the site is actually Game Reactor Portugal, and I'm going to put links in the description for all 3 of these sites so you can go check them out yourself. Maybe you can speak Portuguese or Polish and you can get a more accurate translation. Maybe you can speak Australian. First of all, we should just laugh at this Portuguese website because they say ORV instead of VR. So that's just ridiculous. What's going on in Portugal? I don't want to know. So these guys are a little bit more critical than the first author, I believe. So they compare it to Siege, but state that it lacks the destruction of that game, which is fair enough because, you know, it's a VR title. So they call it simpler than Siege because of the limitations of VR. So he goes on to say that running and gunning is not a very smart option and that teamwork is absolutely necessary to succeed in this game. Interestingly enough, he goes on to say that it's much easier to be on the defending team as all of you can just go into one area and cover all the exits or something, but like judging by that, he makes it sound imbalanced. But I kind of wonder if maybe if I was on the attacking team, could I just fire a grenade in on top of him? Would he still say the same thing? I don't know. So next up he talks about the aim controller, saying that it was easy to use for the most part. However, one worry here is that he talks about the shooting not feeling right. So from what I can tell by reading this, he's saying that the sight on top of the gun, the red dot sight, was not accurately reflecting where the bullets were actually hitting, and so it was throwing his aim off. He said that moving the aim controller further away from his face helped to fix the issue though. So I'm left wondering if maybe it's a tracking issue where the aim controller ball light crossed paths with the lights on the headset and caused a bit of jitter or a bit of, you know, tracking issues there. That would be my guess, but if that was the case, you could elevate the camera and that should alleviate that issue. It's also worth mentioning that he is the only one of the three to point out this issue, so I'm not going to panic just yet, but I will keep it in mind because it could be a genuine concern. He goes on to talk about how easy it is to switch weapons by pressing triangle, and that the left hand trigger, which is the L2 button on the aim controller, is how you throw grenades. So he confirmed that there's like a grenade arc that appears and that'll help you throw accurately. He then talks about the unique characters. Now interestingly, he says that he didn't get to see the unique character abilities in action, which kind of suggests to me that the devs are still working them out or maybe balancing them or something. Either way, they're not ready to show them off just yet. So he also talks about 3 distinct loadouts: the assault class, the shotgun class, and a third, more stealthier class. Now I'm not sure if these classes were like just custom builds for the demo, or if these are like you have to pick one of these. Maybe you can mix and match your own ones, I'm not sure. But for the stealth one, I'm assuming there's a silenced weapon in there or something. So he closes the preview saying his only issue was the tracking issue he seemed to have, but that everything else shows great potential. So finally, real quick, we'll just go over the Polish preview. So this site is called spidersweb.pl, and apparently these guys are defining Firewall as a racial tactical multiplayer shooter, which I can only assume is a Google Translate error, or perhaps they're talking about how you pick contractors from different countries or something. Maybe that's how they say things in Poland. I'm not here to judge, I don't know what's going on over there. So this guy confirms that he played Firewall at the same event in London where Blood and Truth was being showed. So Sony must have had a big PSVR showcase or something and not invited any English speaking journalists, the exception being Australians apparently, though they barely speak English, so you can see how they probably slipped through the cracks a bit. Anyway, this guy says that Firewall had the biggest area at the showcase, which shows to me, I think anyway, that Sony are really backing this game up, and hopefully because they know they have something special on their hands. So this guy confirms that the third stealthier loadout includes a silenced machine gun, but he also adds that you can turn on flashlights on your guns, which we've seen in the reveal trailer actually, and also that you can use mines to some extent. Now the way he worded this, I'm not sure what he meant. He said something like pawing your enemy's mines or something like that, but I assume that just means you can place mines. So he talks about there was no smooth turning. Instead, you turned at roughly 30 degrees increments, but there's every chance that that was just for the demo, so I'm not going to panic. I'm sure the devs will add in smooth turning, or else. So this guy adds unique criticism here. He says he hopes the devs can work on the animations for the remaining members of the band, which I can only assume means teammates, and maybe by logical extension they're enemies too, because they'd all have the same animations. I can't say I noticed poor animations from the little gameplay I've seen, but let's hope it's not as rough as something like Honor and Juicy, and I think we'll be okay. So he closes the preview wondering if he would get bored of it eventually, so he kind of hopes there'll be more maps and more modes. Something, you know, just content really, that's what he's asking. And so there you have it. Finally, we got some new Firewall 0 Hour news. Some new impressions, and I think overall all of it seems to be mostly positive. There's a couple of concerns raised, in fairness, particularly the aiming and shooting concern of the Portuguese previewer, but other than that, the hype for this game remains high. This is still my most anticipated PSVR release, and I really hope we see a release date soon. E3 is just a couple of months away, so fingers crossed we see more there. They may even announce a beta test at E3 that could be played immediately or something, which would be really cool, but I'm probably getting way ahead of myself there. I must say, I continue to be surprised by the lack of coverage from the bigger guys. Like, where's IGN's impressions? Eurogamers. Surely they'd be at the European events like these. Maybe VR games don't generate enough clicks for the big guys, I don't know. Maybe they're writing their impressions right now as I speak. What I want to know is, what do you think? Are you wet for Firewall? Will you be playing using an aim controller? Do you have a squad ready to blast some fools with? Do you think there will be an Irish contractor character named Pumpkin? Should we create the petition for that to be added? Leave it all in the comments, because I love to talk about Firewall. Anyway, lads and ladies, that's gonna be it for this video, so help a brother out and leave a like, subscribe, ding the bell, and as an old friend once said to me, fuck off.